In this video, I'm going to try and explain how the building paper or house wrap that is the moisture barrier between the stucco or siding and the framing members can actually create a problem for a window and cause windows to leak if there is a small hole or even multiple holes in the paper. And here I went ahead and we're looking at the back of the paper, and I just kind of drew a little hole in there, which would be common. It's not uncommon to damage the building paper while you are stapling the paper, attaching it to the framing, to the wood framing studs. And it's also not impossible to damage the building paper while you are stapling or nailing the lathing wire to the wall studs. Now let me try and explain how the water can get behind the paper. If it absorbs into the stucco enough, or if you have a little gap between the building paper and the back of the stucco, you can actually have moisture or water that can seep into one of these gaps, cracks, or holes in the building paper, and then of course it will just simply roll down the wall stud onto the framing. It's not uncommon to have the wood absorb some of the water, and again, this all depends. You might not ever see a problem like this if all the water ever does is absorb into the framing and then somehow evaporates out of it. You might not ever see a problem, but if there's enough water, you are going to see a problem. Now I removed the building paper, and now we're on the outside of the home or building, and this is another row of building paper. And remember, this building paper is not damaged in my example. So the water can get behind the paper and roll down the framing components and drip at any time. It'll roll up and under any ledges. It'll absorb into the subflooring, absorb into the trusses, and it can just keep going down. And it'll actually, in some cases, it will just absorb into the wood framing, working its way down as the moisture keeps coming in. The more moisture that comes through the hole, the more difficult the problem's going to be. So the moisture is just going to keep working its way down, and it's actually going to work its way behind the flashing paper around the window. Now don't be confused here. It can work its way behind, and it can work its way in front of the paper also, depending upon how the paper, the building paper, if the building paper is touching the flashing paper, it's not going to be uncommon for it to roll down. Water can also roll down horizontal paths. So it's going to be hard to imagine the water rolling down on the edge of the flashing paper or the building paper, but it can run down the edges of the framing, and this is what makes some water leaks difficult to find. I'm going to pan out here. Let's just say that you have a water leak over here. The water leak can actually roll down onto the top of the wall framing and over, and I've seen it travel great distances, especially with roof leaks. So it wouldn't be uncommon. You could actually have a problem with this window and start tearing the stucco up to try and find the problem and remove some of the stucco, and then find out and actually make the repair. You never find the damage, and then when you go to make the repair, you've never solved the problem because it's coming from another distance. These are nightmares. I can't say it any other way. A leak like this could be a nightmare. It might require you to remove the stucco entirely and redo it correctly. And I'm not trying to scare you. I just don't want you to think that something like this is, if there's a leak up here, that the problem's going to be right above it. You're going to be able to fix it real easy, not going to be a problem. Let's go to the back here. Now, if the water rolls behind the paper, then it can go on top of the framing. If you have a window header, like I just said, if it's level or out of level. If the window's out of level, the header is out of level a little bit, the water will tend to go in that direction. If it's sloping down, it's going to go to this side. Now, again, it's not going to be uncommon to have the water roll on top of the header. This is a nice flat surface, and then roll to either side of the header. And then once it does that, if you have drywall or if it's plastered, it will be absorbing into the drywall as it's rolling down and actually around. So if you have drywall, there's a good chance you're actually going to see the drywall start to become damaged, and maybe the metal corner bead starting to rust. Some of the water could actually roll down back over to here onto the window frame, onto the window, and then since this is the top of the window style here, since that is level, or if it's out of level just a little bit, the water could actually roll on top of here into the sides of the window. Now, if you have a wood trim, this is where it gets a little difficult. Sometimes you have a wood jamb or some trim around the window. Again, the water can drip off of the header onto the level surface, around on either side of the trim, or work its way down to the sides, and then of course continue its way down to the bottom. Or you might see it leaking, and then you might have a leak between your trim. The trim and the drywall, you might actually see where the water is leaking. Again, the water is going to travel through the easiest spots. If the trim around the casement here, or the frame that is built around the window, if the trim is sealed with caulking, then of course the water is not going to come through. It's going to work its way around or absorb into the wood. Now, that's it for this video. I might make another one, but I made this video as a response to an individual who is having these types of problems. Now, the best, I would say, who do you call for something like this? I would call a stucco contractor. These are the people who are going to be able to provide you with a little more insight. They're the ones that I would imagine would be able to fix a problem like this. I can't think of anyone else, because if you have stucco, the lathing paper is probably damaged. The window flashing could also been installed incorrectly, or might not be sealed properly, and that could be the problem. And either way, I think a lathing and stucco contractor would be your best bet for this type of a repair, or at least contact one of them and get their opinion on whether or not they would be the right contractor. But that would be the first call that I would make if I had a problem like this.